Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 16th of June, and I am very fortunate tonight to have a rare but very welcome visit from one of our hosts and regular co-host as well, Sunny Danforth. Sunny, great having you on the show tonight. It's been a momentous few days.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's absolutely. It's been a momentous few days, and it's nice to be here with you, Kevin. You and it's been quite a while since we've done a program together, and so it's very nice.
Yes, I love it. And I have I promised viewers that I would continue coming up with new and interesting hats to wear, and today I have one that I picked up this weekend, a Trump 2028 hat. It is
I love it.
it's very appropriate, mostly because it makes Democrat, progressive, liberal heads explode, and and it frankly wouldn't be bad for the country based on everything we're seeing. Although he is acting like he's only got X number of days to do what he's got to do, and that's the way we got to keep doing it. But boy, we've had quite a few things happen in just like the last week, and it's intensified in the last few days. I guess the first thing up is the war between Israel and Iran. And it is a war of necessity that Israel has had to launch because Iran thought that they could play the same old games of dragging their feet and pretending to negotiate while they rebuilt their defenses that were knocked down last year when they attacked Israel and Israel counterattacked and eliminated their air defenses. And then Iran also thought they could just play the same game with President Trump. And apparently, playing a game with President Trump is not the same as playing a game with the mentally disabled Joe Biden. It has turned out very differently. And I think it's been deftly handled because Israel's Israel's only 9 million people. That's
Yeah.
it. And, Iran is 80 million. And Iran is its leaders have promised to wipe Israel off the face of the map. And they've said it repeatedly, especially in the context of acquiring nuclear weapons, which they were getting very close to doing, actually. Now, they might be a little bit further away from it now, but that was last week. And I know you kind of covered this when it first came out last week, but now there's been some additional developments. Apparently, Iran is calling on President Trump to force Israel into a ceasefire. I think, talk about the art of the deal here. It's like President Trump just keeps emphasizing over and over, you know, you really should negotiate while you still got something left to negotiate about, and because we're obviously done with giving them money, and we're done with letting them. The proxies have been greatly diminished or destroyed. So Hamas was a proxy. The Houthis in Yemen that were trying to fire missiles at our ships in the Red Sea, they've been pummeled thoroughly. And then Hezbollah. But now Israel is like, look, we're not going to wait. And, it's kind of a proxy war, but with a very willing proxy and a very capable proxy in Israel who, we're playing good cop, bad cop, right?
Yes.
President Trump saying, don't attack us or it's going to get really bad for you. So don't even think about it. But maybe you should negotiate. The hand of peace is out. And then meanwhile, the sword of war has come down and hit their nuclear facilities, their command and control. Their top military guys have just been wiped out. Like the guys that were supposed to go to the negotiation on Sunday who were just playing games, they're gone.
Yeah.
And the intelligence officials, they've been salamied, as it were. That one guy's name was Salami, which I thought was fascinating, and they said he's been shredded into salami himself. But they're asking President Trump to step in and save them, and the answer is no. Get rid of your nukes, and then we'll talk. And then he also has to deal with our allies at the G7 who want President Trump to sign on to a de-escalation pledge or letter urging de-escalation. And of course, right now, de-escalation is primarily just in the interest of Iran, who would like to just play for time
Yeah.
and maybe try to get some of the rest of the world to feel sorry for them or something. And it's like, nope, done with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in the UN, the day before Israel launched this, and in fact, it might have even been the same day, said that Iran is cheating. Iran is not being truthful.
Yeah,
And let's not forget that Trump gave Iran 60 days.
yeah,
And he said, and now today he says Iran should have signed the deal. I told them to sign. What a shame. This is a quote from him. And a waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I
yep.
said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran.
Yes, that was the other thing is he gave them a hint. It's like, well, here's
Yeah,
what you should do: evacuate. And at the same time, you know, Iran is like, well, we can't give up our nuclear weapons. Like that, I'm sorry, it's just probably going to keep happening because this
yeah,
is exactly why it's happened.
it
And
is.
Hegseth, the defense secretary, is directing more resources to the Middle East to make sure that our defensive capabilities are in place. But Iran, um, and I think it's also kind of brilliantly handled because it's not the United States that is initiating this. It's Israel who doesn't really have a choice.
No,
Israel has kind of described itself as a one bomb state. You can see what Iran is willing to do with conventional ballistic missiles that have 4,000-pound explosives on them. They're just willing to hurl hundreds of these into Israel. They would not hesitate for a second to use a nuclear weapon on
no,
Israel by the same token. And they're sending it at indiscriminately at civilian areas. The
yeah.
Israelis really have stuck to military targets, command and control, and the nuclear uh, research and development programs for their nuclear weapons. And that's it.
Well, actually, they've hit some oil. Now they
Yeah.
are hitting today, they hit some oil production, and 85% of the income for Iran is all based on oil,
Yeah.
petroleum. It's all petroleum. And they
Now that
said,
it's not
okay,
based on Joe Biden, it's based on
no,
petroleum.
no, it's not based on wind turbines. It's not based on solar panels.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, now we'll just start hitting your money. We're going to hit you in the pocketbook. And that's when Iran says, oh, wait, oh, wait, can we please have a timeout?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, because, sign a deal. But, the deal they've signed before, they were not being honest. The
They
reports
didn't
were,
stick to a deal, and that wasn't a good deal. So it was
no, it
like,
was not a good deal.
so now they have to they have to sign on to a deal that we consider a good deal and that will have some sustainability to it. But Iran's also lost all of its proxies that they used to go and terrorize the Middle East with. So, and even Putin has warned the supreme leader that the supreme leaders in Iran, his regime's survival is at stake. Now, the reason why the regime's survival is at stake is one, Israel knows exactly how to hurt them and kind of damage them. But then two, actually, we're not against the people of Iran. The people of Iran are overwhelmingly against this regime. And if they get
Yeah.
weakened and the army is like, I don't think we're going to go and start shooting all our own people to protect a collapsing regime that overplayed their hand, we could see some political change here soon. That is, um, oh, and President Putin apparently called Trump to wish him a happy birthday, uh, which is interesting because Putin is, I don't know, sounding strangely more amenable. Like maybe he really need this is a message to more than just Iran. Let's put it that way. If you
Yes.
start playing with the guy that is uh, knows how to negotiate and knows how to wield power, because what good
Hmm.
is a negotiation if you have the choice of ignoring it and playing games? It's
Yes.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tell you, I and my from my viewpoint is Israel is doing this and they're taking a beating for doing it, but this is the world's problem.
Yes.
This I've said that on my own program that this is the world's problem, and we cannot have a bully. And Iran, with the regime that is in place, has absolutely been a bully and wreaking havoc, all over the Middle East. They're not been sowing peace, that's for sure.
And they're not talking peace,
No.
and when they would talk about peace, they mostly talked about how um, uh, they really have been at the forefront of terrorizing the world and
Hmm.
funding it, and unabashedly so, and claiming it was like some sort of divine right that they had been given. Um, which, how do you change somebody like that? You change
Yeah.
them with force, with overwhelmingly irresistible force. And this is exactly what's happening. This is peace through strength. This is what it
Yeah.
looks like, because during the Cold War, whenever we pretended to be, um, what's the word? When we thought we'll just ask people to be friends with us and we'll unilaterally let our foot off the pedal with them, it
Yeah.
always backfired. That was always a
Yeah.
message to like the Soviets or the other bad actors in the world, do whatever you want. And then Ronald Reagan came in and taught everybody about what peace through strength means. He
Yes.
spoke directly and clearly. He still kept open the channel for peace, which is why that's what we got. But we also had strength. So we weren't doing it from a position of weakness either. And when has a country ever been attacked because they're too strong?
Yeah, exactly. And so and Trump knows that we do have to have peace through strength. That's what he has reiterated all on the campaign trail, that we must have that. And so I my heart goes out to Israel, the citizens of Israel, and the innocent civilians in Iran as well, because as Israel said from the very beginning, this is not against the people of Iran. This is against the regime.
Yeah, and the regime is been there for 40 years, and they're hated. Actually,
Yeah,
they
they are.
the people of Iran are going to get a window of opportunity here, and the military and the people within the halls of power in Iran are going to have an opportunity to make a choice,
Yeah,
and they better choose wisely because they are not going to have a nuclear weapons program, and they may not have much of a military soon. That's the other thing is if you keep sending up planes that just get shot down, and you keep uh, firing missiles that get shot down, and you keep acting belligerent like you're tough, Israel will continue to just deplete your military of its existence. They are totally capable of doing it. And by the way, we're finding out what American weapons look like in well trained, skilled hands. This is what it looks like. People who know how to use the best weapons in the world can do this stuff, and they can be a country of 9 million people taking on a country of 80 million that wants to destroy them.
yeah,
And I think Israel wants peace. And this is actually the only path to it. This is how you end all the scourge of all these, Hamas's and Houthis and Hezbollahs. Syria collapses; they've lost that as a proper proxy. So I just love it. This is reminding me a little bit of what it was like as we got to the end of the Cold War, and we started seeing the pendulum swing, and we saw just how um, by sticking to your guns, literally, and making sure the other side knew that you weren't going to flinch, they actually start to the pendulum swings, they start to collapse, and then we can move on from this. By the way, I loved what President Trump said to the Iranians. He goes, we don't really want to fight you, you just can't have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
We would love to trade with you, we'd love to for you guys to become rich, just don't spend it on killing people
Yeah.
and committing terrorism, and that's it. And that's a message to everybody who thought that might have been a good idea, right?
That's very, very true. It is. And Israel is doing this because they must. For the nation of Israel to survive, this is a necessity because Iran will not come to the table and negotiate. They are
Yeah.
way too close. And we've they've been saying they're close for a long time. Well, I believe that they've got some good intel that is saying that, and it is about survival for Israel. And let's not forget, Iran has also said they will death to America, and they will come after us as well.
They were clear about that.
Oh,
And
very.
there's and there is a reality that we have to deal with, that the President Trump has called for the Golden Dome, right? They
Yes.
have the Iron Dome and a bunch of systems that are similar to that we helped them develop, some of which are actually systems we supplied them. But the scale of Israel, it's tiny. It's only, I think
Yes.
at its narrowest point, it's only 40 miles wide, which is nothing. I mean, you're further than the state of Israel from me right now, and then
Yeah.
the state of Israel is long, not to mention wide, and so to protect the entire United States, there has to be a real effort to do that. But look how it paid off, because they could take a tough stand, confront a dangerous country, and still do what actually the Defense Department's supposed to do, which is defend the United States
Yes.
first, right?
Yes.
I actually got to hear something that Marco Rubio said the other day, and I was very impressed with it. He said, for decades, and this is he applied this to everything, but he was talking about trade policy and immigration policy, as well as what we're doing with Europe and the Middle East and so on.
Hmm.
And oh, by the way, well, I'll finish that thought, but we have a surprise guest I'm going to reveal here in just a moment. But yeah, he said for decades, what we did was we did what was good for the world. Now we're focused on doing what's good for America, just like every other
Yes.
country. And every other country should understand that. So, with us tonight, a big surprise here, Don Anderson. This is the trio. I can't believe it.
I
Hi,
don't know.
Don.
Hey, it's good to see you all. I don't know. It's been a long time since we've done this, but with all this excitement going on in the world right now, why not? Right?
Oh, yeah.
We were
Why
just
not?
talking about Iran and Israel and everything that's going on there, um, and there's so much to cover, but we've just only so far been talking about how this is such a great example of peace through strength. Because you can't just you can't just say things. You have to do things to back up the things that you say for them to be real, to make a difference in the world. And that's exactly what is happening here right now. And Israel had no choice. They could not wait. They could not wait.
Yeah.
And I just think it's fabulous, because the United States is not doing this fighting,
Yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
we're in a position to respond if attacked, and we're in a position to support the ones doing the tough work for, as you said, Sonny, the world.
Yeah.
Israel's doing the world a favor. Sometimes the world's a little too stupid to know it. Like some of these G7 countries are like, let's de-escalate. And it's like, yeah. So is that what Iran's doing right now? Are they de-escalating? Is that what you do when somebody keeps lobbing missiles at your civilians in your cities? Is you de-escalate as they refuse to give up nuclear weapons and they're
Right.
losing all their nuclear weapon infrastructure? Do you de-escalate? Does that sound like a really smart strategy?
And then there are those who are saying, like, wait, what are we waiting for? I mean, at the end of the day, here's the thing. If Israel doesn't do it, we're going to have to do it eventually, because it's only a matter of time before these people had the opportunity to figure out ways to lob those things across the ocean. So they're doing a favor for the rest of the world, just like they did back in '86 when they
Yep.
took out those nuclear reactors back then, and the rest of the world, rained their sabers and they were all angry at them, but behind closed doors, they were all, yay, thank you. It's the same thing
Right.
here. If they didn't do it, we were going to have to do it. So thank goodness for Israel.
Well, and they did it with the best weapons in the world. The ones they developed and the ones we helped them develop or gave them. That's how this is supposed to go. And this is a message to the Europeans, by the way. This is what it will look like in the future when the Europeans step up and do their part, which is, if you're going to make sure that Europe is protected first, act like it's your continent.
Right.
No, exactly.
Right.
And this is exactly where our priorities should be. It's what happened with Israel there is much more important than what's happening in the Ukraine from our perspective. Ukraine, that's Europeans' backyard. They need to deal with that. This situation here will soon be in our front yard and the entire world's front yard. So from a priority standpoint, this makes a whole lot more sense than what's going on. That's spending of a fortune in the Ukraine.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I love how that's starting to shift that's how Reagan shifted the world in 8 years, from what seemed to be losing the Cold War to actually literally having it in the slam dunk in the bag. There was a sort of an ending and an unwinding of everything, and things could have gone wrong with that. But, I think that we learned something from that era. I wish that they would teach that to kids in school. I wish kids in school would learn about the Cold War, how it was fought, what almost did go wrong at different stages, and how it ended, and why it ended peacefully. It's the biggest, most dangerous war that never happened, and here we are again with, in 4 short years, a blustering fool and a bunch of progressive nutcases. We're in charge of the most powerful country in the world, and literally we got 4 wars. We got 4 wars.
Yes.
Immediately. I mean, you think about
That's what DEI will get you.
Yeah, that's right.
We're talking about the Houthis would have been running around with nuclear weapons. That's how close we were. We're probably just a few months away from that, because the first thing Iran was going to do was give those weapons to those people. And then through their proxies, we'd have to deal with that all over the world. You couldn't even go to a football game without wondering whether this is going to be the time that somebody sets something off, particularly given with our wide open borders, courtesy of you-know-who. So the timing of this really could not be better. And I thought Trump played it perfectly. They were given all the warning in the world. 60 days you need to get this squared away.
And
On
the eve of day 61.
Yes. Yes. On the 61st,
watch by
it's over. Yes.
They were given warning. They were given every opportunity. And here's the other side. I'm not sure if you're hearing these reports now, but the Iranian people are right. They don't want this. It's not the Iranian people. It's the Iranian government. They are already rising up against them. They're cheering whenever they see bomb strikes happen in their own country, because it's their government destroying them. So Israel's doing a favor to them too.
And let's remember one very important thing. Twice, Iran threatened to kill President Trump, as well as the former Secretary of State. They actually, I mean, how much mercy should President Trump have on somebody who literally tried to make sure that encouraged people, supported people to go and kill him last year? I mean, there were 2 assassination attempts. We still don't know the full origin of both of them. Certainly the first one is cloaked in mystery, to put it mildly. But I don't think you take your foot off the pedal here. You ride this until, frankly, Iran cries uncle, and if they don't, you weaken them to the point that their own people and their own military decide they've had enough of the morons that are in charge. That are, frankly, I think that it was always dangerous that those guys couldn't easily be deterred. They're just kind of proving how stupid they are now. When, I don't know if you, one of my favorite scenes from a movie about combat is Monty Python's The Holy Grail, and
Yes.
there's the knight who was it the Black Knight or something like that, and he's getting in the battle with this guy, and he comes in and he tries to attack him, and he gets his arm cut off, and he goes, "Ah, that's just a flesh wound," and he comes back at him and he tries to attack him and gets the other arm cut off, and then he doesn't listen. Then the next thing you know, he gets his legs cut off, and he at the end the guy's still, he's like, "Come back here, I'll bite your knee," and he's like, "Forget it, you're done." This is what Iran is going to end up being, or at least mullahs, and I don't think everybody in Iran wants to follow those guys down that path. They want to have a good, prosperous life where they can raise their kids and, frankly, be a bit more free than they've been, for sure. So, well, that's on the foreign affairs front for today. That's plenty for foreign affairs.
I have to
Let's
mention
turn.
one last thing, because Kevin, I think this is so hilarious too, and this we'll get into. This is another one of those quick and dirty history lessons. But the reason that the Ayatollahs are in power in the first place is because the Carter administration and those
Yeah,
guys taking down the Pahlavi regime in the first place, because they had this
yeah.
liberal idea of like rebuilding another country in terms of how they work. They got rid of. We could do it better, and we wound up with Ayatollah, 400 hostages, and the whole place where we find ourselves now. It's like everything they touch turns to poo is the best thing you could say. And I'll stop right there. It's amazing.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Any last thoughts on the foreign policy stuff there, Sonny?
Well, just going with a little off of what Don said, Trump in his speech said, we are not into nation building or nation reforming. We don't want to, we just want to do business with you. We want to have peace and do business with you. We are not trying to overthrow anything like that. And right now, it is up to the people of Iran. If they want the regime change, they're pretty weak over there, and it's up to them to do it.
Here's their chance. By the way, we
Yeah,
have a nation to reform and rebuild here already.
that's a
So,
fact.
For sure.
yeah. Speaking of that, so some of the news that we encountered here, I'll just touch quickly upon this assassination that took place over the weekend. And of course, there's rumors going in all different directions. I don't know what the story is with this guy, but I found it interesting that it was basically about a year since we had seen the assassination attempts on President Trump, and this was destined to happen at some point, and yet the Democrats immediately came out and said Republicans better condemn this, and it's like,
Right.
done. We did it last year. We condemned it last year. We're condemning it this year. And by the way, where are the Democrats condemning the violence in LA and the violence in Portland and the violence in Seattle? The so-called mostly peaceful protesters. They created this circumstance. And so I think that it's up to Democrats to explain how this is going to be a different world in the future, because they're putting all this violence behind them. Now, this guy sounds like he might be kind of a nutcase. I don't know. He had lists of people in his car that they said they released. They're sort of selectively releasing evidence right now. He also had a bunch of flyers talking about no kings in there, like they were gonna. So I don't know where he. I don't. They try to read in the political tea leaves, but the guy also posted on a family blog that he was going to war, that he went to war last night. Interestingly enough, he went to war on the same day that the No Kings thing was going on. And
Yeah.
so I just think that before we get to the bottom of this, and it's got to be the whole truth, not like what they did with that trans attacker in Tennessee in the school, where they wouldn't tell anybody that this person was trans and had a manifesto to kill all these kids at a Christian school. This is a this is an investigation. They should get to the bottom of it. They arrested the guy. They've got him. But I think, and by the way, one of the people that was actually killed, so two people were shot, and I guess they're wounded and in the hospital, and two people were fatally shot. And the Minnesota Democratic State Rep Melissa Hortman, who is the former House Speaker, she was actually one of the only Democrats in the Minnesota House to vote against providing funding, state funding to illegal immigrants. And I guess she had a teary-eyed press conference talking about how she just felt like she was obligated to explain why she voted the way she did. But this guy then goes an officer right after that. So, and it was pretty targeted. It was a state senator and it was a state rep. And who knows what the motivations are here. All I know is that I have no problem condemning political violence, but the Democrats seem to have a double standard for that.
100% they do. 100% they do. They've been promoting it. They've been speaking the violence, frankly, into existence. They've been calling for it. And now here you have a lawmaker gets murdered right after a vote that the left certainly doesn't like. And that is wrong. That is so wrong. There is nothing wrong with having an opposite opinion. There's nothing wrong with voting your conscience. There's a lot of politicians I can't stand because of how they vote and their ideals. But it has not crossed my mind that I'm going to go do something like that. It's no, you're going to vote them out. You're going to do everything you can to get rid of that person. And, but that's not how the Democrats playbook.
Well,
they want
the dark
fear,
side of that too.
And this does bring fear.
Yeah, well, you got to follow the money on this too, because this guy's clearly not operating on his own, and that's the scariest thing about this. This isn't some lone ranger out there shooting up. The guy's he's got no documented source of income, from what I understand, and he owns like a $500,000 house on X number of acres in Minnesota. How are you financing that? He's traveling all over the world. He's got all these weapons. He's got access to police officer uniforms, so he can fake this whole thing. So clearly, somebody is supporting this. This is strategic and designed on purpose. And it's more than it's worse than an assault on this poor woman and her husband. It's an assault on every one of us. It's an assault on our entire system. When it starts, this is what life looks like in Mexico. This is why the government's non-functional there, because politicians can't vote their minds. You can't speak your mind, or this is the result. This is what happens to you. This is treason at its highest level. I don't think life in prison is enough for this guy. I'm not a death penalty advocate except for a couple of cases, and treason is certainly one of them. This, to me, is like the worst kind of treason you can do, on top of being, a heinous murder. It's a murder on all of us. And this has to stop. And one last thing I would say, and this goes to what you all were just mentioning about the Democrats fomenting violence. We've now seen they've blown up the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania with his family in it and just about killed him. And that was a Democrat.
Yes.
Jewish, that was a Democrat. The assassination of that healthcare executive that they seem to cheer and promote, they're perfectly fine with that. I think there was another executive in San Francisco who was assassinated on the street. They're perfectly fine with this stuff. And now we have this, and I didn't even mention the Trump assassination attempts. So this is what you get with the unhinged radical left.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. And, this last weekend, this is kind of a good lead into that. This last weekend saw a lot of protests called No Kings, which is based on a fallacy that President Trump is acting as a king, when in fact, or that he's a threat to democracy. I love how they say that. When in fact, it was the democratic element of our system where we do vote that elected him and elected a Republican Congress as well. And they are simply doing what they promised to do, that the people voted for. And the Democrats think that isn't democracy. They think that if you use an executive order to enforce a law passed by Congress, that's anti-democratic and unconstitutional. It's fascinating, the delusional mindset. And I noticed, so I was down in Eugene for there was of course, Eugene had its No Kings rally. They estimate between 6,000 and 10,000 people in Eugene. There was a bunch in Portland, other cities across the country. We know, of course, LA, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I had the opportunity to show how we could respond to this. And I wanted to share that because, let's see, I don't know how easy it is for me to, let me see if I can share the video, because I don't think I've ever actually tried to share a video live on the show, but let's just see what happens. And if it works, it works. So give me just a second here, because I may have to turn on the audio for that. Give me just a second, because you know how they make you watch an ad and then
Oh yeah.
skip it. Let me see if I can get this on the screen for you. And so share. And all this was there was an event organized by a Canadian American, recently naturalized Canadian American, and it was a flag wave over a bridge over I-5 just south of Eugene in a place called Saginaw. Let me go ahead and see if I can play that, and hopefully you can hear it, because, like I said, this is a bit of an experiment to see if it actually works. Here we go.
Over I-5 today, dozens gathered on the Saginaw Exit Bridge for a flag wave demonstration, marking Flag Day and the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. Around 40 people lined the overpass, waving American flags as drivers passed below. Organizers say the event was also in celebration of President Trump's birthday, which coincides with both Flag Day and the Army's historic milestone.
There's a lot of people that say they aren't happy or proud of our country. We are. We think today is a day to remember that flag represents freedom, and that's something that 250 years of people serving in our Army, starting with the Continental Army, fought for and died for.
The group stood on the bridge from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., waving flags, honoring history, and showing their support. And over I-5.
So there you go. How was that?
That worked well.
Okay. I will see. I will cancel the screen share if I can do that. Anyway, let me get back to the boxes here. Sorry, I'm a little clumsy with this because I haven't done it. I've never done it live during a show. So
you're a tad bit better than I would be.
Well, I will keep working. Oh, here we go. There we go. That brings us back. I found the right thing to click on. Yeah. So anyway, all we did was we knew that there was going to be these big protests in Eugene and across the country. And I just called up the TV stations that we got great coverage for that congressional candidate in Eugene last year, Monique Despain. I just called them up and I said, well, I know maybe you'd like to offer some balance. We're going to be doing a flag wave, and it's President Trump's birthday. It's the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army, and it's Flag Day. So we're going to fly the flags we should be flying, not the ones from Mexico or Hamas,
or anywhere else.
Or anywhere else. Just the American flag. There were a few Gadsden flags, but that's an official flag of the United States, by the way. Historic importance of the Revolutionary War. And anyway, and I did video. That was my video, and a couple other folks. We just took video of it ourselves. And then they called at the end and asked me, would you come do an interview just talking about it? Gave them the video. Boom. Dozens of people competed with 10,000 people on the news. And I think we can do this everywhere because we offered an alternative, which is there's a lot of people that are quiet, that just spend time with their families, go to work, go to ball games. They do all of this stuff, and they don't have time to go and participate in these clown shows that go on with these protests. And by the way, I said clown shows. I put a link to the video of their protest, and just watch it, and you'll agree with the term clown show. There's makeup. There's all kinds of nonsense. They look like they're going to a costume party, but it's all based on a fallacy, that a fantasy that they have, that President Trump is a dictator. Meanwhile, um, uh, he goes to court, he wins some, he loses some, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what 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 king goes to court and submits to what the judges decide? Who does that? Well, Joe Biden didn't like to do that. Joe Biden decided he was going to mandate vaccines for everybody, and it turned out he didn't have the power to do it. But he got away with it for a while, didn't he? And so that is what an authoritarian dictator looks like. And we narrowly escaped getting somebody who was even stupider and probably far worse. In
What you're saying is so spot on, because only a small look, the percentage of the population that works and runs the country, they don't have time for this stuff. That's why they're not out there. And the
that's
media
right.
keeps focusing on this minority. If they were such a big majority, then why did they get smoked in the election? So, and the polling continues to show tremendous support for what Trump is doing. So they can do all this public nonsense all they want. They're doing this stuff because they don't work and they have nothing to do, but this is their religion. They don't have families and they don't support anything. They don't work. They don't pay taxes. All they have to do is go out here and protest on everybody else's dime. And to your point about kings, well, for one thing, kings don't get shot. Kings usually the ones doing the shooting. So kings
Yeah.
don't get shot at. Kings don't have their homes raided by their own Secret Service organization. That doesn't happen. Kings don't negotiate with their Congresses. This one negotiates with his Congresses. This kings ignore what the courts say. This one's been like following what the court says. It's absolutely the stupidest thing in the world for someone to believe that this guy's behaving as a king. When in fact, as usual, the Democratic Party is guilty of everything they accuse you of doing. They haven't had a single elected official run for office. When was the last time they had a primary? You got to go clear back to Obama to think of the last time they actually had a legitimate primary. So anyway, I'll stop.
Well, and I did want to mention too that Joe Biden, if you want to talk about somebody who acts like a king is somebody who takes a legitimate government agency and turns it into a weaponized tool to go after your political opponents and to silence and suppress the free speech of your citizens, where you start to treat them like subjects. That's what a king does. That's what Joe Biden did.
Oh.
I'd like to add that Trump made a tweet and he says, "Oh, the no kings. Thank goodness you guys did this so good." And I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me. And he says, "Oh, I thought there was going to be a king taking over America, but no, here I am. I'm still your president of the United States." I thought that was so good.
Yeah, it was kind of making fun of using irony to point out the fallacy that they engage in. And the truth
Yes.
is, we have an elected president who follows the law, and by the way, enforces the law. That is, it's the president's obligation not just to follow the law, but to enforce the law, to take care. It's the take care clause in the Constitution. You're supposed to enforce these laws. Joe Biden issued a giant waiver to all of that. Here's, by the way, I found the tweet. I don't have a link to it, but it says, "A huge thank you to all the, quote, no kings, unquote, protesters yesterday. I was very concerned the king was trying to take my place. But thanks to your tireless efforts, I am still your president. Great job, all."
Yes. That was so good. So good.
Right.
Well, and there was something else that he got to do this weekend too. Sorry if you had more to comment on there, but go ahead, Sonny. Well, I was going to say there was a fantastic event this weekend, wasn't there?
There was. I'll tell you, I watched the parade, the military parade on television, and the festivities and that. And I will tell you, it's something. I have seen one in my lifetime, only one military parade, and it was over in 29 Palms. And I will tell you, it was so impressive to be there live, right? And with all the armaments and all of that. And it was after we did the shock and awe of
Gulf War.
Yes, of Gulf War.
They said that's the last time that there were any military parades was after the Gulf War. And by the way, if you look at any of these things where Democrat idiots comment on it, there's a guy who commented on the YouTube video I just posted, which is highlights of the anniversary parade. If you don't have time to watch the whole thing, a minute and 18 will give you the highlights. And this guy goes, it had nothing to do with the Army's 250th anniversary. In America, we don't do military parades. How was the Army's 200th anniversary parade or the 100th? Right, they didn't happen. So this is like, I'm kind of throwing in the, pretentious, passive aggressive, weirdo leftist vibe when I say all that stuff, because you can actually picture somebody saying that. And it's true. So what about military parades? Well, you just said after the Gulf War, they did military parades. They did a military parade in 83, I believe it was, in honor of the Vietnam veterans who didn't get parades when they came home, but when they had the Vietnam War Memorial was put out there. And by the way, I distinctly remember some pretty big parades after World War II when people came home from VE Day and VJ, and it was, this guy. What are they?
We've had lots of parades. And it was high time to have another one and honoring our Army 250th year, because as Trump said, we wouldn't have 1776 if we didn't have 1775 and have an army, to fight. This was the founding of our nation, the fight of our nation, our nation's founding. And it was great to see old uniforms, history of old uniforms. I really enjoyed it very, very much.
Democrats hate the fact that history is being shown. Even when their party was part of it, in many cases in a positive way, they hate history because the new Marxist-based far left progressives, they want to destroy history so they can rewrite it and call it racist. And call it, transphobic and all this garbage that they throw at it, when in fact we have a proud history of doing the right thing and using peace through strength, getting peace through strength for our entire history. By the way, there's I just posted a link to President Trump's remarks as well. I haven't got to watch them yet, but I understand that they were noteworthy for two things besides being very good. One is the shortest remarks he's ever made, which is fine because we know we have a verbose commander-in-chief. We do like to listen to him, but there's moments when it's good to sort of step back and let the Army be the star. And that was the other thing, is that as much as the Democrats tried to make it about sort of a parade that was supposed to honor President Trump, none of the troops, none of them were playing happy birthday for him. It was all about the Army and its proud history and celebrating, 2.5 centuries of that tradition. And he actually made remarks, based on all accounts, that caught that exact spirit of the military. And you just quoted some of that there, Sonny.
Yes. Don, you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that one thing that is clear about the left, and this underpins everything, they hate the United States of America. They hate everything it stands for. They're pro-Marxist, and the things they hate freedom. They hate the family, and they hate religion. Those are the three things they hate, and those are the foundational underpinnings of this country. And so they hate everything about it. So anything that would speak to anything to be proud of about this country, they're always about tearing that down. And it's completely irrational. I've had some discussions with some of these people in person. Let's say on the topic of slavery, for example. They are so ignorant, they don't even know that slavery has always existed in every continent, in every culture, in every corner of the world, way before it ever got here. And yet, if you Google slavery on YouTube, 95% of what you'll see will be North American slavery, which occurred in the last 200 years. There'll be nothing about the fact that the only countries in the world that went to war to get rid of it was the only one that went to war to get rid of it against itself was the United States. 600,000 men lost to get rid of slavery. The only countries in the world to get rid of it were European countries, primarily Great Britain and the United States. Great Britain sent ships to sail the seas to go capture slave ships and destroy them. No other countries in the world did that. And they never speak about the slavery that exists right now. They're worried about slavery and getting reparations for things that happened 2 or 3 centuries ago. People are long dead, but at the same time, they could care less about the slavery that's occurring in North Korea, that's occurring in the Philippines, that's occurring in China, that's occurring in India, right under our noses. Not to mention the kind of slavery that's coming across our border, where they're enslaving these young children to be into the sex trafficking business. They
Yeah,
could care
right.
not one word about any of that, because that doesn't take down the United States. So the only time you ever hear about anything from them is when it has something negative to say about the United States. And I'm not sure there's anything that can be done about that portion of the population, but we just need to keep speaking it loud and clear. We need to communicate to the generations after us what a great country they come from and how fortunate they are.
Important factoid, by the way, Don. It was the first Republican president who led that Civil War effort and ended slavery, and that's always left out of, whenever you see these reports, there's something bad about a Republican, it always says this one's a Republican, but when there's something really good and historic, he was just a president. Apparently he was just a president, even though it was the reason why the party was formed. It's like
the crimes of the Democratic Party are so stupendous, and we've allowed them to get away with it. For example, we allowed them to say the Civil War was North against the South. No, it wasn't. It was Democratic Party against the Republican Party. Democratic Party wanted slavery. Republican Party was against slavery. You look at who stood in the schoolhouse door. That was like Governor Wallace. That was a Democrat who did that. Who was it that what do you call it, in Arkansas? They wouldn't. Eisenhower had to send the National Guard to get kids into school in Arkansas back in '57. Who did that? That was a Democrat governor. That was Governor Faubus of Arkansas that did that. You go down the line, who invented the Ku Klux Klan? The Democrat Party invented the Ku Klux Klan. It's who put people in concentration camps? The Franklin Roosevelt's administration, Democrat administration, put Japanese in concentration camps. No, who dropped the atomic bomb, whether you think it's good or not? Democrat administration did that. Republicans had nothing to do with that stuff. And we never speak up and say this stuff. We need to put the blame exactly where it belongs. They're the party of enslavement, and this is the party of freedom.
Yep.
Yes.
You were going to jump in, Sonny.
Well, I had an interesting conversation, and so part of how we make the change is by educating people. And I just arrived back today from Florida, and I was in Seattle airport, and actually, no, I'm sorry. I was in Orlando airport, getting on a plane very early this morning. Well, while I'm waiting, I see this fellow with a backpack on, and he has a sticker that says tyranny is in America. A bumper sticker stuck on the back of his backpack. So I stood there and I looked at that.
He's
for
right.
A while.
He is right.
He's right. And so I went up to him and I said, "Have you got any flack for this sticker?" He goes, "I just put it on." And I go, "Oh." He goes, "Do you want one?" I said, "No." I said, "I get enough flack for the stickers I have on my car already." And which is Trump and other, things about freedom and our current president. Anyway, so the bottom line is, though, we had a great conversation. And then I wasn't quite sure where he was with this sticker, right? I don't know. And but I quickly figured it out where he's at, and he was the opposite of me. And so we had been talking about, that we need to have more civil conversation. It's okay to hear opposing viewpoints and things like that. And so I told him, I said, I'm going to tell you, I said, our viewpoints are opposite. He looked at me and he says, "You are a Trump supporter?" And I said, 100%.
Heck yeah.
I said, I love what he's doing. If we do not save our country, we have got so much, corruption and, spending into oblivion. If we don't save our country, we are going to lose it to communists. I will tell you, at the end, he was agreeing with me.
Yeah.
And he was, and it was the common ground and the common sense. So on my bag that I take when I fly, it's my little briefcase, I have a button that says, Forget change, bring back common sense. So when he showed, so when we first started talking, I said, no, I don't need your sticker. Here's mine.
Mhm.
He goes, oh, yeah, we need more common sense. So actually, we had a lot of common ground, and that's what it takes.
It
You know,
does. It does. And I think that the other side wants to divide everybody.
Yes.
And they don't want us talking. And by the way, they want to engage in unprovoked physical violence against people. And there were some examples of that this past weekend. I'll just post a few. There was up in Seattle, a journalist was attacked. A conservative journalist was knocked to the ground and beaten by Antifa. In Portland, they stormed the ICE facility, and I'm posting links to the video right now that anybody can go watch. And there was somebody who came and parked a van without any license plates.
Of course.
It's kind of a chilling description. Two people in black bloc parked a van without license plates or any other markings, got out, threw their keys across the street into the bushes, and left. Now, they towed that van from the ICE building, but I got to say, I'd like to know what was in that van,
Right.
in all honesty, because that was either a test to see if they could get away with it, or it had explosives in it. I think there's got to be, and we should find out. We should know. But this is happening, and they are trying to provoke President Trump into calling up the National Guard. And you know what? If they attack a federal facility, you damn betcha he should do that.
Yes.
And if the Democrats don't like it, start actually providing security in this state instead of poo-pooing all of this and calling it mostly peaceful when they do this stuff. And there's video that you can see in those links of them busting out the window of the place. And so they should also arrest and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law any of these folks that did any of this. I think there's a window of opportunity to change what was done in 2020, which there wasn't enough of that. They should have prosecuted them.
Yes.
Yeah, the restraint, I must say, the restraint on the part of the National Guardsmen, the police officers, I don't think there's been a single death caused by a police officer or National Guardsman yet. That is incredible when you consider what these people have been doing. You know,
I know.
Back in 68, back in those days when this was going on, people were like dying. We all remember Kent State, or at least we know of Kent State, for example, right? So I got to commend them for having incredible discipline in the face of what these leftist governors are doing. By not enforcing the law. The number one job that a politician has is the safety of the citizens, either domestic or against foreign. And these people are not doing their job, and they're doing it on purpose. I mean, I think the strategy clearly is to have Trump actually enact the Insurrection Act like they did in Reconstruction, and just take over these states or take over these geographies, and then they could turn around and scream the Cold Kings thing. That's the strategy.
That's they're baiting them to do that. But I will tell you, I've listened to multiple legal experts, some of whom don't agree with President Trump about half the time anyway. And they said he's on very solid ground here. It literally is explicitly in the Constitution and in federal law enabling this power for him. When federal law cannot be enforced, he has actually the right to call up the National Guard and employ troops to ensure it is enforced. And we know that not only from the plain reading of the law, but the examples given from the South in the 50s and 60s. They have a perfect right to do that. And the Democrats are actually taking the side of the Ku Klux Klan from the 50s and 60s. Guess they're just getting back to their roots, you know.
Back to the roots, same old, same old.
That's right. By the way, sadly, there was an innocent bystander actually shot in Salt Lake City by a so-called No Kings protester that was just stupid. I guess he was, I don't know what these guys are doing, but in the end, they've got to figure out a way to make it so that peaceful protesters can peacefully protest. But as soon as there's an insurrection, you don't have a right to peacefully protest at the edge of a riot. You don't. And there's a way to change that.
It's called Law and Order, Kevin. I'll tell you, in Florida, I saw a video of and the news covered it. They said, and Governor DeSantis said, there will be, you can peaceful protest all you want, there will be no violence. And so some people with a banner went out when the traffic light turned red. They went in the sidewalk, not out in the middle of the street, went in the sidewalk and with their long banner and were chanting and all of that. And then when the light turned green, they got out of the street because they know they'll be arrested. They know the citizens will actually just drag them out of the street. They won't tolerate this in Florida. And that was refreshing to see.
Yeah, I hear that in Florida, if you decide to go and try to assault somebody while they're in their car, their laws actually are much more accommodating to you being able to escape in your car if you
Yeah.
decide to do that.
Yeah, you
But
have the right to protect yourself.
yeah, which is actually a fundamental human right protected
Yes.
under natural law and preserved in the Constitution. One last story that you mentioned earlier. In Oregon, we still got this problem. We got not only progressives running things, but we got businesses leaving. And a venerable, iconic Oregon-based company, Tektronix, is moving out. They're leaving Oregon for North Carolina, interestingly enough.
I did not hear
And
that.
that was just after Dutch Brothers, which had its liberal tendencies of the years. Apparently, it doesn't go so far as to continuing to tolerate the economy brought to us by corrupt, failed Governor Tina Kotek. And so people are leaving, and it doesn't, their politics are not what's determining this. It's they just can't do business here anymore.
Well, you get down to
Yeah,
just basic public safety. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sonny.
no, it's economic suicide by design, you know?
Yep. Yep. And taxes that are coming around the bend. The Democrats got no message from last year other than let's just do more of the same. So this is why we do this show. This is why we have to keep sending these messages. And it's a special night. I'm so glad both you guys could be on here tonight. This is wonderful. It was fun. And
Absolutely.
this is a show where we infotain and we also like to maybe send a
I
message.
like that.
That will make some heads explode, I know, but indeed, the message is getting through. I know it is. We'll keep doing it. Thanks, Sonny and Don, for being on tonight, and you guys will be back on Wednesday
Yep.
with the episode of the Captive Audience. Then tomorrow night, I will have Representative Ed Deal on the Captive Audience, and we'll be pre-recording it because of the timing of his duties that he has in the legislature. But then it's going to be streaming at 6:00, so everybody get to watch it. He's always great. Anyway, thanks everyone for being on tonight. Thanks guys for joining me, and we'll see everyone on the next